Hi everyone, Jeff James from Mythology. And before we jump into our marketing workshop, I wanted to explain a few concepts and philosophies that Mythology takes in our development of your marketing system. And that'll sort of set the stage for these pillars that we're going to work through. So a couple of things. One is, the first thing to realize is that a lot of times people from a marketing or advertising perspective, they spend a lot of time thinking about the part of marketing that the audience sees. And we have a little analogy here that we often use at Mythology, and it's thinking of marketing as an iceberg. So if the top of the iceberg is your creative and your advertising and your website, all the visual things that people see, that really only represents, in this analogy, about 20% of the iceberg. So that's certainly an important part because that's the visible part. But if that part of your iceberg isn't sitting on a really big foundation that's underwater, typically about 80% of iceberg is underwater. If you don't have a strong marketing foundation, then what people actually see above the water is not going to be the most effective. So what are some of the things that are underwater for marketing? Well, it could be that your value proposition is well tested. You might have done some research and surveys. You might have done some focus groups, but literally what this all comes down to are the specific marketing goals that your organization has, how you track it, how you've tested it to make sure that what you say in the visible part of your iceberg is actually resting on a really very strong foundation. So that's one piece of information I wanted to make sure you understood. The second thing is in a great new book from the authors of Made to Stick. It's a couple of brothers who have done some great work in marketing. And they have an analogy about how to affect change. And one thing that marketers should really understand is change management. Because effectively, that's what we're trying to do with customers. We're trying to get them to change their beliefs and therefore change their behaviors. And so a really neat analogy that they had, picture yourself in India, and maybe there's a guy riding an elephant on a path. And so to sort of deconstruct that a little bit, the analogy here is that this represents change. And the rider represents intellect within us. So this would be sort of the facts and figures that we use to make decisions. So the practical, logical side of things. The elephant, the biggest, strongest piece of this picture, represents emotion. So these are the feelings that get generated in order to affect change. And finally, the path represents the environment or the tools that make it easy or easier to create change. So when you think about the intellect, emotion, and tools, in this picture, the rider has some control because he can guide the elephant. And the path or the tools has an influence in where that elephant's going to go. But I think we would all agree that if that elephant, in other words, the emotion, really wants to go wherever he wants to go, he's really in control. And so when you're talking about change, or therefore marketing success, we have to address the power of the elephant, the power of emotion. So you're going to hear a lot about that throughout this workshop. How do you tap the emotion of your customer? Finally, I wanted to leave you with this concept. Many of you have obviously heard of a customer development funnel. How do you generate awareness, and then interest, and then maybe action, and conversion? So we're trying to get a population of customers through the funnel to become customers. And that's a pretty standard way of looking at things. However, in this day and age, it's not so linear. It's not so easy to measure whether, how somebody became aware and then got interested, and, they don't act very predictably. So that's one challenge we have. But the biggest challenge we have is this funnel leaves you without thinking about how do you harness the power of your existing customers and your existing advocates. So a new kind of funnel, an inverted funnel, is also getting built these days. And over here, we're talking about loyalty and advocacy. In other words, how can you make sure that your customers are going all the way down the funnel to become loyal customers and advocates of your brand? And what's really powerful about this is as you empower your advocates to be the ones to fill the funnel again with new customers, new prospects. About 90% of advertising and marketing budget is spent up here. How do we generate new brand, new revenue, new relationship growth? When in fact, the most powerful way to influence people is through word of mouth. You know, peers influencing peers. And unfortunately, a very little amount in most marketing budgets is spent on empowering and animating your loyal base of advocates. So again, in this workshop, you're going to see a lot of focus on the bottom part of this funnel so that you can turn them loose to go fill the funnel all over for you. So those are some key concepts I just wanted to introduce for you. We're going to jump into the first pillar, understanding, here in just a minute. Take a look at the tools beside this video, and you can do some exercises on your own related to these concepts.